Are you navigating the complex world of law and feeling somewhat lost as to your next career move? Perhaps you are a senior associate or a partner looking for that next career move and don't know yet where to go. Do you find yourself questioning whether your legal career is moving in the right direction? If you are, then stay tuned to hear insights from Hanna on how to thrive in the legal sector and navigate your next legal career move. Welcome back to the Charlene Giselle Show. I'm delighted to introduce you today to a very special guest, Hanna, a community-focused leader in the legal recruitment and talent solutions world, founder of KC Partners and an investor and strategic advisor to legal tech startups. Host of the top 1% ranked Legally Speaking podcast, which I love, powered by legal tech unicorn and center Clio, Rob is a voice of innovation in our beloved legal community. Rob, welcome to the show.
Charlene, thank you so much for such a kind introduction. I'm a huge fan of your work. I love what you're doing for the community. And the only reason our show is so good is because we have amazing guests. And you are a fantastic guest on our show. So it was an absolute honor to be part of your show.
Oh, thank you. I was reflecting back on that recording when I was a guest on your show, and it feels like a lifetime ago already, and it was only 2 years. Where has time gone?
Well, I think we both keep busy, so I think a lot of things happen over those 2 years that time just flies by, right? But yeah, it was a blast, and I love what your show's all about, and I'm really excited for today.
Well, speaking about the show's theme, let's dive straight in. Rob, why don't you tell us, what is your professional superpower?
My professional superpower, in my humble opinion, is relationships. So I am in the talent building world, talent solutions, talent attraction, talent retention, and everything in and around people. And so one of my mentors taught me very early on into my career, contacts are good, but relationships pay. And so I've really mastered the art of how to nurture relationships, start relationships, and ultimately ensure that they go on to fruitful, two-way, meaningful conversations that lead to deals, friendships, business opportunities, all of those wonderful things you very kindly mentioned at the start. But I would say mastering the art of really understanding, fostering, nurturing, and building relationships has been one of my superpowers. And without that, I don't think I'd be halfway near to anything that I've achieved today.
And how did you acquire this superpower?
Well, I think it comes back to my trade. You know, I've been in the interviewing of people, questioning people, understanding their careers, their motivations. I've been learning a lot from people right from very university days. And so moving into my first job, which was obviously in recruitment in the heart of the city, and very much in tough times. You know, I started my career in 2008, which was the Lehman Brothers crash. You know, you really had to connect with people because people were losing jobs, people were in financial difficulty, people were having issues within the home and work. Various things were happening. So I learned very closely and very early on that I need to be really interested in people and I need to be good at skilled interviewing. And that just came naturally to me. I was naturally good at that sort of asking people, being curious, being able to listen, being a trusted advisor. And so really right from the start, I was connecting people because I was showing empathy. You know, when people are in a tough situation where they maybe are losing their role or something's happened, you know, I wasn't just treating people as a transaction. Where I think it's really important if you're thinking of building genuine relationships and relationships for good in business, you really understand what's important to people and you treat people with respect and empathy. And that was something I was able to sort of grasp very early on, which sounds beyond basic, but it's amazing how many people just want to do a deal, whatever it takes, or want to make something happen, whatever it takes. And when you move away from that authentic human connection, I don't believe you become as skilled at building those relationships as you could be. And that's why it's always been my number one superpower.
And how do you think that specifically sets you apart from your competitors, if I may say so, in your world?
Absolutely. I think the number one reason is because I care. I genuinely care. Jolene, we've done work together in
We
other
have.
ventures and other avenues, which we maybe won't talk too much about today. But I think you understand when you're in the people world. I am helping people with ultimately one of the biggest decisions of their entire life. A career, a job isn't just a job. It has so many facets to that individual, who they become as they grow through the years, who are in their friendship circles, who they're learning from, their income potential, their knowledge potential. So it's really important that I care about what people are telling me. And I'm also, when you get to that level of understanding that you care, you can also be confident enough to also critique, or maybe constructively critique, and offer consultancy. And I think that's what sets me apart. I'm not a recruiter, I'm a recruitment consultant. And the consultant piece is very important, because I believe if you care, you will consult and you'll give the best advice you can in line with what's important to people and understanding what their needs and wants are. But coming from a place of, I want to see people happy and flourish. I don't want to see someone take an opportunity and then be looking in 6 months' time. I would see that as a fail, regardless of the fact that we would get paid the fees. Which I don't believe in. And that's why I say I'm not building a database like every other recruitment agency. I'm building a community built on kindness, collaboration, trust, thought leadership, knowledge, because probably I'm going on with my answer, but I think it's very important that with what I do, that I educate throughout people's careers, because you may only be looking for a new opportunity once every few years. If you're just a purely transactional, non-relationship focused recruitment consultant, I believe it's very hard to keep an ongoing relationship. But why I do so many of the things that I'm involved in, like the podcast, like these various other webinars, events, networking, all of these things, is because I want to be seen as a thought leader that's adding value, that shows that I'm caring about the industry that I'm operating in, day out. And as a result of that, I don't just want to place somebody once, I want to place them for their life. And that's the relationship that I have. And as an extension of that, of course, the customer lifetime value of that particular one relationship exponentially goes up, because you're helping someone from newly qualified level right the way up to partner. So that relationship capital is increased, but it starts at the beginning of genuinely caring and growing with them.
And I think that theme, right, of relationship capital is often really undervalued.
Well,
I see that quite a lot. Tell us more.
I believe it's undervalued because people don't have patience, right? They can't see the immediate goal. I.e., most people in my industry want to ring somebody and hope that they are actively looking for an opportunity right at that particular moment that's relevant for their brief. And to the extent I understand that, because like in any industry, like with lawyers, billable targets, there's targets that need to be met. But I think if you take a step back and think, actually, everyone I'm speaking to is a potential connector, someone who could increase my network, someone who could teach me things, somebody who could help me. And maybe I can't help them now, but I could help them in the future. So it's worth investing the time getting to know them, to start a relationship. And I think that's really important. Whereas a lot of people aren't prepared to put in the work at the start, because they're just focused on the end goal, where actually I'm focusing on the journey and growing with people throughout their journeys. And if you do that, then your networks will grow, your reputation will grow, the level of referrals. Most of my business now, admittedly, I'm old, I'm gray, I've been doing this for a while, but most of my business now is from inbound referrals through reputation. And I think if you get to a level where you have been doing this for a while, and you build up that reputation and show that you care and have a track record, then you're going to get referred to other quality people. You're going to get referred to other quality people within your industry, and it's only going to lead to a win. But I think the answer is because people don't have the patience to want to build the relationship.
Absolutely. And they perceive it as transactional rather than human.
Correct. Absolutely. I when I started in one of my earlier roles, I was a little bit shocked. When I would overhear conversations, people would be speaking to candidates, and they would hear, maybe it was a mother and one of her children was sick, and they couldn't make an interview, and I'd be hearing things like, "Oh, can't you find somebody else to look after your child and still go to the interview?" That for me is an immediate sign of no empathy, no understanding, no human connection. It's just a case of I want to do the deal. And once you start going down that route, I think you can be successful to a point, but I always say, and my grandfather, my late grandfather, was one of my best teachers, said, anyone can be successful, Rob. It's far harder to stay successful. Invest in yourself, invest in people, and it will come back to you. And I've always believed in that, and that's been so important. But yeah, I was also quite blessed when I started the industry, because I saw a lot of the things that I didn't want to be. And so that's why I want to change a lot of what I want to see in the industry, and hence why I do lots of things connected to the industry, because I think there's so much you can do if you're around people. And you've been a huge part. I have to say, Charlie, you've been a huge support. You've been a huge, collaborator. And this is what community is all about for me. And I can tell you, the internal satisfaction I get from the work that I do outweighs any of the sort of financial or whatever else means that come with it, because it feels good to do good, right?
It does. It really does. Tell us a little bit more, Rob, about this crucial role that community building plays in your brand building as well. Because one of the things that I love so very much about you, and actually, funnily enough, we were both speaking at a conference, LegalX, and you were speaking on the topic of building personal brands. Yes. And I was speaking on the topic of sustaining high performance. So it really fascinated me to hear you talk about the topic of brand building, and you did it so beautifully. I thought it would be wonderful to hear a bit more about the role of community building and the connection that it has to brand building.
Yes, no, great question. I think you did a phenomenal job as well, and all your talks and everything you do are fantastic. Look, the reality is there's only so much I can do as one individual. So what I mean by that is there's only so many people that I can practically help at any one point when it comes to maybe helping them with a job search. So that's quite hard to scale that, right? And to make a real impact. And I noticed quite early on, I was like, I'm getting lots and lots of inquiries, questions, things. And I thought, it's really sad that I'm not doing enough to help them. And that's when I thought, wow, the power of community. Actually, maybe everyone can be seen, everyone can be heard, and everyone can feel like they're getting something from me. And that's why I went all in on producing content, because a lot of when I first started, like the Legally Speaking podcast, I was very strategic. I was producing content around a lot of the key themes and questions that people would ask me day in, day out. Rob, how do I improve my networking skills within the legal industry? How do I make myself stand out to be a good quality lawyer? What's the difference between going in-house versus a private practice career? How do I become a partner in a law firm? All of these questions I was getting, but I just didn't have enough. I didn't have enough time, so I wanted to create vehicles and actually drive discussions and put good thought leadership and good content. And as a result of that, it's built this phenomenal community where people are actually saying, hey, Rob, thank you so much, because I've been trying to get the answers to this information. I really appreciate you doing that webinar or releasing that podcast episode or putting out that blog or collaborating with that individual or learning about biohacking when you came on the show, Harley, all these various things. And so why I think it's so important as a personal brand, because again, it comes back to showing you care. Not only does it give you thought leadership through collaborating, collaboration is domination, and I do a lot of that because I want to be around smart, intelligent, kind people that are trying to make change, and I'm all about disruption. I'm all about pushing the needle forwards. But as a result of that, a lot of people were saying thank you. The amount of times I get LinkedIn messages or whatever it might be, saying thank you, I really appreciate you doing that. That is for me the power of community. Everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. And of course, as time's gone on, we've built a Discord community. We have up to 1,000 members offline. We do lots of in-house sort of discussions. LinkedIn have obviously taken notice, and I've been working with LinkedIn, and I've been featured in LinkedIn News, and I've been producing lots of content for them to help people with careers. So it all comes back to my compass, though, and my mission, which is to create a kinder, more collaborative legal community. And that's what I put on most days, most times, is I really want to do that. But it's all well and good saying that. I need to actually back it up with doing a lot of things. And that's why I'm always getting busy doing things. And as a result of that, it's been great. And of course, a personal brand has been born of that. And as I mentioned, LinkedIn, I've done talks for Thomson Reuters. I've been flown around the world by our sponsor Clio to Nashville, and all these amazing things have happened. Yes, but it all started from doing the work, right? Because I was like, I don't want to people not feel that they can't be in my community, and they can't be seen, they can't be heard, and they can't get access to the information that they need to be successful in a career.
And what I love is that I've seen you do all that you describe, so I can be the witness and
Thank
actually
you.
find it remarkable. And perhaps I'm going to bring a bit of a controversial topic, but so many platforms and you on so
Yeah.
many of them. And I'm going to say specifically where I see you almost on a daily basis and sometimes multiple days. I see you being super active in the WhatsApp group that we share for that legal
Yes.
community that you lead so well. I see you putting up your content on LinkedIn. I see you releasing your remarkable podcast. I see you active on your Discord group. And I am here thinking, oh, and I just forgot. I also see you do a great Instagram live, and I've just watched one of them the other week. And I do see it and think, wow.
But I think it's, and it's very kind of you to say, and thank you. But it's, to build trust, you have to be consistent. To be consistent, you have to have a mission. To have a mission, you've got to be passionate about it. And I'm very passionate. I always use, if I can go down a little rabbit hole just for a second.
Please. I love rabbit holes.
Why do I do what I do? And I always ask people that question, particularly lawyers that might be stressed or unhappy in a role. And you would have seen, Jolene, people who are burnt out or struggling and what have you. And you have a lot of techniques and methods to help them through that. But why do I do what I do is because I want to, with that mission, emulate the success of my late grandfather, who was a lawyer himself, who started his own law firm in the 1950s in the United Kingdom, which went on to be one of the most successful law firms outside of any London major law firm. He lost his father at the age of 8. He came from a working class family. He had to do it all from himself. He really worked hard. And that was inspirational to me. But that's not the inspiring point. That was part of the inspiration. The point was when he retired. So when he retired, every year he would get lots of Christmas cards delivered to his house. And, I was a young kid. And I'd be like, Grandpa, I don't think you have this many friends. And he said, no, I don't. And I said, so who are all these Christmas cards from? And he says, they're from clients and generations beneath of my clients and children's clients. And I said, wow. And I said, yeah, but you stopped working years ago. And he's like, yeah, but they still write to me to tell me about what they're getting up to and what's going on in their lives and thanking me for the work that I did. And that point hit me. I just thought, that is legacy. Bear in mind, this is in a non-social media, offline world, people bothering to write to somebody each year, telling them how grateful they are for the service they did for them and updating them on their lives and feeling like it's really important to them to do that. I thought, wow. If I can emulate that success of helping people, but in a digital world, so not only my young daughter can find me, can search and trace and actually find all the things that I did and help all these people and leave a positive impact and legacy, then that for me is I've done a good job. And that's what gets me out of bed and that's what gets me inspired. And that's my biggest why and what keeps me accountable.
How does that align with your core values, Rob?
Very much so, because look, the first thing I always say is we're human, right? And so I make mistakes. In fact, actually just yesterday, we made quite a big mistake on something. But do you know what I always will do is I will own a mistake. Okay. And I think that's a core value of mine is accepting when something goes wrong, don't go blame. Take accountability for something, even if it's someone in your team, and in this occasion, it was someone in the wider team that had made a mistake, but it's very easy for people to point the finger. And I think that can lead to bad culture. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people leave jobs because of blame culture and lack of accountability. Whereas if you're in a position of leadership or thought leader, I think really owning mistakes and being accountable and saying, look, this is wrong. I absolutely agree with you, but you have my word. I'm going to do everything in my power to make this right. I think a lot of people respect that. They may still be agitated because of whatever may have happened, but it's one of the core values for me is number one is definitely owning my mistakes. And with that is sort of trust and respect. Another great quote that I love to say a lot of the time is live respected, die regretted. Right. And I think it's something that's very important to me is I want to ensure that not from an ego perspective, but that I have whatever I've done is come with a level of respect. And as a result of that, it's, I have to be true to my actions. So I have to be consistent. I have to be innovative. There's some of my core values that I'm always thinking the next thing, like Discord, like when it's NFTs, like when it's Web3, like when there's all these things going. I like getting into the world of tech. I like
I
challenging
know.
industry norms. That's very, very important to me. But trust is also a very core value of mine. I want to be able to trust and work with people that I trust, because I think it's the number one thing. People talk a lot about personal brand, and I listened to a video with Steve Jobs the other day, and he said, look, people spend millions on branding and personal branding, and we've done lots of talks about it himself, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to trust. Do people trust you? Do people
Yes.
trust you, Charlene, to buy your services, or to be part of your community, or to listen to your podcast, or to turn up to an event that you're at? Do people trust me to put one of their most precious things, their career, in my hands with helping with the next job? Do they trust me to listen to my show? Do they trust me to follow my content? Do they trust me to ask me a question? That really is the brand. And that's something that's so important to me. But I do caveat that, I make mistakes, we're human, and, it's how you actually learn from them and move on and rectify things that's important.
And what I find really touching about your brand and your ability to be transparent, which I think is a very important trait of leadership, is that you actually share the journey. So just the other day, I was reading a LinkedIn post that you had shared on not pressing record on a podcast.
Yeah. Please tell me you've pressed record. I've seen you press record today.
Are you happy for me to share this today?
No, you absolutely. Anything I put online, I'd be happy to discuss offline or online. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, so that's an example. Charlene's referencing them when one of the earlier days when we had started podcasting. I'd got very excited about a guest we'd had on. We were chatting before we went live on the mics, and I thought I'd clicked the record button, and it got to about 3/4 of the way through that particular interview, and I realized I hadn't. And it was a little bit awkward, but actually the guest was very happy to reschedule, and we did manage to make a second time better recording. But it just comes back to my point that, as amazing as things may seem, sometimes we make these silly mistakes. The main thing is I don't think I've ever done that again. So I learned from it. And 250 odd episodes in, I think, one hiccup had taught me a very fine lesson.
And it's amazing that you share those, because we all make them. I make them on a regular basis. And I think anyone who says they don't is either not doing enough or not being honest.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes back to, you said what's important, that authentic human connection. I don't believe that we're in a B2B or B2C world anymore. I strongly believe we're not. I strongly believe we're in an H to H, which is a human to human connection. We're all humans, whether you're a corporate, whether you're a solo entrepreneur, whether you're a lawyer, whatever it is you may be. And if you're able to really build that human to human connection with people, you're going to be so better off in your career, in your life, and everything, because that's what people really are craving is connection. And I think particularly when you look at a lot of the tech tools and AI and everything else that's out there now, it's very important to make sure that you don't lose, in my opinion, that human side, because that human touch is still very, very, very important.
It truly is. But as you know, and I'm sure it's something that you hear on a daily basis, if not more, a lot of our clients that we have in common, be it senior associates at leading law firms, often have an objection when it comes to personal branding. Very, very often. And I work with top talents. And when I talk about helping them building their internal brand, elevating their internal brand, which, as we know, has huge values, I often hit a wall that I work on with them and coach them through around. But at the end of the day, I'm an employee. So I haven't gone down the entrepreneur route. I don't need to build a brand as passionately as I would if I had chosen to be an entrepreneur. I am building my brand vicariously through the law firm's brand, and I represent the law firm's brand. I really want to hear you take on that objection.
Yeah, and look, it's this is a mindset thing, right? So let's use a scenario. We've been through challenging times, right? We've been through recessions, we've been through a pandemic, we've seen market volatility, we've seen a lot of things. You could lose a job. you could be made redundant if you're in a certain firm. One thing's for sure, if you lose a job, you lose a job. But if you have a personal brand, you don't lose your personal brand. So I actually believe your personal brand is your biggest asset, but it is also your biggest insurance policy. So what do I mean by that? If you're building through your internal firm network, absolutely fine. I understand that, but that's still quite limiting. There's a whole wide world out there of contacts, and actually, the bigger your brand goes, the bigger your networks go. And I'm not going to say the cliche phrase on your show because no one wants to hear that, but it's the truth, right? Like, my business could go bankrupt tomorrow. Extreme example. I don't think we will. We've actually had a really good year, but let's use that scenario. I believe off the back of my personal brand, there will probably be 10 phone calls I could make immediately to start a conversation to ask for help. And by the way, asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. I'll repeat that. Asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. Why? Because if you need access to information or you need to get to a solution, you try and go to the quickest route possible. So it's a strength to use your strength if you've built a network to go out to people who can potentially help you, right? So I just want to kind of mention that, because a lot of people are like, oh, I shouldn't ask that question because I should know it. Or actually, if you don't know it, you don't know it. So as a result of the personal brand, I can restart myself. I can kickstart myself. I could redo something. Let's say the Legally Speaking podcast stopped tomorrow. Not going to do that either, but let's say we did.
I can hear Clio here getting nervous. Your sponsor is not happy. They're going to ban my show, Rob. Careful.
Yeah, this is true. No. But, off the back of the personal brand, I could launch another show, and so that could go off. So I think it's very, very important, because we're living in an age now where you can no longer be invisible. We live in a digitally connected, hyper-connected online world. Now, I know that some people may struggle with that, and I totally understand that, but we are in different times, and I think there is a need to be present. And I think if you show up, and actually you'll be amazed by showing up how much you actually enjoy it. Because if you're being true to yourself, and by the way, you can build your own personal brand in whichever way you feel most comfortable. You don't need to copy what I do. Charlene does whatever you do, whatever you would like to do that feels natural, because that's your personal brand. That's who you are. And it's not perfect brand, it's personal brand. So, maybe you would absolutely hate to do videos. Maybe you would absolutely hate to do, a podcast, for example. Maybe that's not what you'd like, but maybe you love writing. And I always think about it this way. Everyone has knowledge to share. Information is the number one thing that, we all need, right? To be successful, we all need access to information. I actually feel that you're selfish not sharing your knowledge, in my view. In my view, I think if you share your knowledge to a level that you can, I appreciate confidentiality and certain things. There are things you have to be. But actually, I think, there's so many people there that you could really help. And as an extension through just organically helping, you're building a personal brand. So it might just be a once a month newsletter. It might be an article once every 3 weeks. Whatever you feel comfortable or could do, you would be helping people that probably really need it. And I think that is probably one of the most satisfying things you could have as a human, if you genuinely care about people or you want to build that human connection. So there's just a few things that I say, but I repeat, I believe your personal brand is your biggest asset, but also your biggest insurance policy, and it will help you ride any markets or any revolutions that we're going through, be that AI or whatever else.
And I'm sure you would agree as well. Even if your intention is to stay within the law firm that you're at, it will help elevate your career and make it faster. I work with a lot of senior associates going through the partnership track, and I've really noticed a very strong correlation between the level of personal brand and existence online, having a voice or publishing articles or being a thought leader, being a keynote speaker at conferences, and the speed at which that senior associate is making partner, or the speed at which that partner is making equity partner or managing partner. Do you notice that as well?
Absolutely. You gave some really good examples speaking at an event, or I'm seeing a lot of people that are building out initiatives. Maybe that's to help diversity, equity, inclusion within the legal profession. Maybe it's something to do with well-being. Maybe whatever it may be. All of these things have a long tail. By that, they've got long webs. If you go and speak at a conference, like you rightly said, there could be hundreds of people in the room that you're expressing your wisdom, sharing your thoughts, building your brand, which indirectly is actually a good thing for the firm or whoever else it is that you're part of. So, of course, that's going to bring interesting opportunities or more opportunities to your door. So I strongly encourage you to see this not as a nice to have, but really as a really important thing. And also, how good is it to be able to go into an interview, go into an event, and people know you already. People know you before you get there because you've been putting things out into the community. I think that's a really powerful thing because you're having conversations are maybe happening about you when you're not at the table. That for me is what I call reputation. And if you have a strong reputation, then that's not a bad thing to happen in terms of more and more opportunities that are going to come your way.
And if someone is listening today and thinking, well, all sounds great. I agree in theory. It intellectually makes sense, but where do I begin my journey?
Very good question. You start with you. Ask yourself the questions. What's important to you? What impact do you want to make? What are your core values? How would you like to make this work? Who do you respect and look up to that maybe you've been following? Could you go and speak to them, get their wisdom, pick their words, put their ideas? And remember, done is better than perfect. Perfect never gets done. And I think if you stick in the lane of, I can never do that because it's not quite right, or this, procrastination, please, make the decision. Do you know what? I am going to go and take that first step. Is all that first step is you're going to write down 3 questions that are important to you and you're going to think about them and what that means for you is what you're trying to do and articulate as a brand. Fantastic. It's still written something down because, what gets measured gets done. And I think for me, if you're just starting, I would do that internal work, asking those questions, and I would reach out to people that maybe you respect or you look up to, who are on a journey that maybe you would like to emulate, but in your own way, and reach out to them, and then do what you feel is most comfortable and feels right for you. But in the same breath, the comfort zone is great, but nothing ever grows there. So be prepared to push your boundaries just a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. And what would be your recommendation in terms of the number one social building platform at this point? And perhaps it's one that has shifted. Maybe you've seen a new trend that you can share with us. And perhaps specifically for our legal community, where do you think is the platform to be at the moment?
Yeah, I'll give 2 if I may, just because I want to say
yes.
if you're sort of starting your career and the coming into this sort of tech enabled world, I would actually have a look at a platform called Entra, which I don't think many of your listeners would have heard of. It's a future of work platform that's trying to challenge LinkedIn, which is actually my answer to the second question that you said, which platform. But what I like about Entra, it's very focused on, as I say, the future of work. It's got a lot of the integration tools from a Slack to all these various features to video to Zoom. It's an all-in-one stop shop, but it's also a platform where you can get rewarded as a creator. You can collaborate with people. You can find out, various startups, entrepreneurs are all hanging out there. And I think that's a really interesting platform to pay attention to if you're interested in that type of thing. In terms of for me, you'll know, LinkedIn is my number one platform. It's the largest professional networking site in the world, best part of nearly 1 billion people. And I always describe LinkedIn as basically a 24/7, virtual opportunity to build your networks. And here's the thing. All of us are probably only one connection away from changing our lives. You're only one connection away from changing your life. That could be a mentor. It could be your next employer. It could be your next podcast opportunity. It could be anything. And so for me, LinkedIn is fundamentally a platform that I invest a lot of my time. But there is obviously commercial understanding for that as well. Why? Because a lot of the legal community and lawyers are on LinkedIn. So to legal professionals, not only are your competitors on there, but a lot of your clients are, right? So I think it's very important to make sure that you're investing time where your clients are hanging out, What's interesting is obviously I'm seeing law firms. I think we've seen Hogan Lovells, we've seen Shoesmiths, various other firms that are obviously now pushing to TikTok, and you can't ignore those sort of video focused platforms. And so, think about where your target audience is hanging out. But I would say for the legal community, probably the best place still at this point in time would be LinkedIn. And you're seeing lawyers putting themselves out there now, showing more of that human side, and they're
More
the
and
ones that
more.
are winning. And that's good for business, in my opinion.
And then that shift as well, Rob, right? Just 5 years back when I was coaching partner, I think it would be fair to say that I could count on one hand partners that I was coaching that were consistently using LinkedIn. Most of the partners I was coaching barely had a profile, and if they did, they didn't even have a photo.
Yeah, exactly.
It was there, of course, with the name of the firm, but there or thereabout. And now practically all the partners that I coach, if not consistently, at least have some kind of interaction with the platform.
Yeah, and it's important, right? And particularly values. I work with a lot of the generations coming in that they're not just necessarily interested in the big salaries, right? Of course, they exist in the city of London, and for some that's important, but they're really bothered about understanding the social impact. They really want to understand the well-being. They really want to understand the diversity, equity, inclusion policies. They really want to understand what their real North Stars are. And I think that's really important. And the best way to articulate that is to put the people of the firm out there and for them to be their true natural selves. And then people will get a good idea. There's no surprise that a lot of people like to go and apply to Shoesmiths that are starting out their career because they've been very active online and been pushing campaigns and things like that, and various other firms. So I believe it has so many potentials for good if you just choose to embrace. And I think, as I say, we live in a digitally connected world. I'll flip it the other way. I think you're only one missed opportunity away by not being as up to date online. So, for example, I always say to people with a LinkedIn profile that maybe isn't up to date, like you said before, there were certain platforms that weren't, that weren't up to date, their profiles. It's like inviting somebody to your house for dinner, but maybe you haven't done the washing up. Maybe you've left a lot of clothes on the floor. Maybe you've left a lot of mess from the night before. Maybe the house is quite smelly. It's not a very good welcoming, right? And the reality is, in the digital world, you have probably less than 1 to 2 seconds to make a good first digital impression, right? And so you could have a prospective client that bounces onto your profile. You could have someone who wants to work for you bounce to your profile. But if they can't see a picture, they can't figure out what you do, you haven't invested any time in your headline, or you haven't put any work in your bio, they probably won't even bother scrolling down to see that you're partner of so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. So I believe it's really important to create that first really good digital presence, because I just call these all digital welcome mats. Every platform you're on is a digital welcome mat to your community and your brand. What you want that to be is up to you. And I think nowadays people expect to see something.
And what would be quick steps? Because as I'm sure it is in your world, my client's biggest objection is time.
Yeah.
Time. I'm busy billing, so I don't have time to be on social media, to be on LinkedIn. How do you address that objection?
Well, again, it's a valid point, but I think it needs to matter. If it matters enough, they'll make the time, and they need to understand, through all the things that we've discussed today, why this stuff matters. It's good for recruitment. If you're a law firm leader, it's good for recruitment. It's good for your overall brand, which could lead to potential speaking opportunities for you. It could lead to prospective new client opportunities. It could lead to collaboration opportunities, more PR, whatever it might be. I believe that this should be not a nice to have, but a need to have. And for me, as a business owner and people that I'm involved in various businesses, it's the number one thing that I'm looking for now, because I don't believe you can rely on the old school methods of word of mouth, which always used to win. And to a degree, it still does to a part. But I believe you have to be visible, because if you're no longer visible, you're almost invisible in the digital world that we live. And that's why I think it's so important, because you could be missing out on so many opportunities that you didn't even know existed.
Of course. And do you have any practical tips or strategy on how to make it time efficient. So once the person has gotten over the objection or the mindset of I don't have time, and actually does make time because they choose to prioritize it and integrate it in their schedule, what would be a good strategic rhythm? What would be top tips to increase visibility?
I think there's two things. Firstly, you will know how much time it is. You maybe if it's only 15 minutes a day, or if it's an hour a week, whatever it is. I think if we're focusing on, let's say, LinkedIn as a platform, there's things that you can do. If you want to just understand getting your brand out there and getting audience, I would look at the LinkedIn news section, which is on the homepage of your LinkedIn. That is which are all the main conversations that are happening on the platform, which are getting virality and having discussions about. So, and there are various trending hashtags. So my opinion is, if you're very time poor and you're like, I don't know what people are talking about and I don't know what to talk about, well, go and look at what's trending on the platform right there, right then, and actually just start maybe a discussion or something, or a thought linked to what people are discussing. And then as a result of that, you suddenly got content ready made there to go. You're not having to guess what people want. That's what the platform is telling you, where the live conversations are right now. So that's a really quick, easy tip to do. The other thing is you can follow various hashtags that are relevant to you. So if it's corporate, if it's corporate law, for example, if you're a litigation, whatever it may be, because when you follow those hashtags, you'll see what events are happening. So you can quickly search them. You can see what people are talking about. Again, you can maybe contribute to a conversation. This is a lot of people say to me is, Rob, I don't have time to create posts or anything else. You don't need to. LinkedIn is a conversation platform, right? So what do I mean by that? I'm a creator. I am posting a lot of the time, but actually the people that win are the people that comment insightfully. So you can just find through the hashtags the conversations you want to be part of and put some insightful comments, but it may take less than a couple of minutes, that are in your thoughts, in your knowledge, in your wisdom, and that will get shown, and you will increase your visibility, because quality comments will get engagement, they'll get likes, and they'll get seen. And it's a really good strategy. Even if you put into Google now, are comments a good thing to do on LinkedIn? It'll probably be the number one way to actually grow on the platform, through quality comments. So that's another strategy you can adopt if again, you're like, I don't have time to craft posts. The other thing is LinkedIn has a scheduling feature. So maybe at some point you say, do you know what, 2 hours on a weekend, I'm going to schedule a couple of posts for the week. So scheduling could be a separate way as well if you did start want to contribute to the platform. So again, I have a thing called WAV strategy, which is written, audio, video. You might be more comfortable writing. You might be more comfortable at audio. You might be more comfortable at video. So do what's most comfortable to use. Use the strategy that's best for you, that you feel most comfortable with as well. So think about scheduling, think about a strategy you're most interested in, think about using features that are already there in terms of LinkedIn news, the hashtags where you can follow the conversations and then just contribute them to you. They're all just some quick, easy ways to start thinking about getting started and then getting into communities.
Absolutely. And how do you avoid social media overwhelm in your busy schedule, Rob?
It's it is a very good question, because it's important, right? And the reality is, I try and set boundaries. So some certain things, mornings and late evenings, I'm quite active in the daytime and I'm in discussions, but that's because it's important to me and it's important to my businesses and I see the values of it. So I'm engaging. But first things in the morning is me time. That early morning time is me, because I schedule a lot of things as well. So that means I don't have to be there at that particular point. And evenings, when I'm feeding my daughter after nursery, or sitting down or whatever it is, like I'll try and make sure that I block out time to avoid making sure that I'm just doing the scream of that scrolling or whatever it might be. So I think it's very important that you set boundaries and set healthy boundaries and stick to them, even if it's just a simple thing of just not being by your phone for an hour. Little things like that can actually be quite helpful, because it's so easy to pick up your phone and just check something or a notification. And it's really important that you do that. And there's a thing that I learned from Mel Robbins, who was at ClioCon last year.
5-second rule, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that I've brought into my day to day, which is, if I'm going to say, like, I'm not going to do something now. So you just basically count down from 5. And it's very important that you count down, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You count down.
Actually, Rob, do you mind telling us? So
Yeah,
I know the rule, I'm
yeah,
familiar with
because
it, but perhaps some of our audience isn't. So do you want to walk us through it?
exactly. In very simple terms, the concept is that you count down, say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then move the action. The reason you count down is because it engages the front part of your brain, right? So it's really important that you do that, because otherwise it's just when you start doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's not engaging, the front part of your brain. You're not really kind of understanding that pre-cortex. So I think if you do that sort of counting down from 5 and then actually do the moving action, it is really, really powerful. So I've been doing that today. Maybe it's, for example, I was needing to make a very important business call. Before that, I do the 5-second call rule and then I make the call, right? So it's really important if you're putting things off, or you're procrastinating about things, or you're sort of stuck at this venture. This is one of the best things, simplest things you can do. And I've done this in very simple form very quickly, but go and read about it or read one of my posts about it in more detail. But it's just those little things, those little tweaks, those little habit changes that can increase your productivity.
Absolutely. And I'm obsessed, to put it mildly, about, I hope I have put it mildly. I am obsessed with high performing habits, because I think they're the foundation to high performers, right? I've spent many, many hours with many, many high performers. And the one thing that I've observed that they all have in common is extraordinary habits. And as someone that I greatly admire for all your talents, I would love for you to walk us through some of those extraordinary habits that you've built over time, and perhaps also some habits that are struggles. So not just the one that you've optimized and you've mastered, but perhaps some that you are currently working on and building up.
Yeah. So first one, and you sort of walking sounds very simple. Every day, it's a non-negotiable for me. I have a dog. I do 2 walks a day.
Very cute dog, by the way.
Yeah. But it's important because most of my creativity and a lot of my thinking about solutions, I can be thinking about something and just not getting anywhere, or feel like I can't get to the answer. By going for a walk, sometimes I always feel like I feel so much better for it. So it's a non-negotiable for me. I always have, and I learned this from you, Charlene, on my podcast about your step bank, right? In terms of
Yes.
in the week. So I have my I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it, but I'm not wearing it at the moment. But this is my Fitbit, right? So I'm already on 10,200 for today, right? So I always have a thing of, yeah, exactly. 10,000 steps is a habit that I will not let go. And if I am short in the week, I will make up on the weekend. And that was something I genuinely learned from Charlene's podcast. So, you can learn so much, just little things from podcasting, but it's a habit, right? So that walking side of things is super, super important to me. I think a habit that I'm trying to work on to get better, and it may sound silly, but it is my sleep, right? Because I've really been studying the importance of really good quality sleep in terms of performance. So I've been tested, this sounds silly, but I've been testing like the best way for me, an angle and place for me to sleep. And I've sort of the last few months, I've been getting this sort of on my back at a sort of certain point, and I've been sleeping better and making sure that I'm not having digital devices near me and little things like that. I'm really working on getting good quality sleep. Now and another reason I've been working on this is because I have basically a 2-year-old. So I've had 2 years of pretty disrupted sleep. So it's really important that I get good optimal sleep when I can. So that's something that I'm working on as a habit, which may sound bizarre, but it's so important. Like if you want to improve your mood, you want to improve your overall well-being, happiness, level of efforts that you've energy, sleep, it all starts with sleep. And that's something I'm working on.
I really don't think it's bizarre at all. I think it's foundational. I'm so glad you've brought it up. And it's particularly relevant in the context of digital presence, right? Because it can be the dark side, of digital exposure, can be often that sleep is impacted, and often negatively.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And other things, like diet is really important to me. I want to make sure that I try and eat as healthy as I can, and activities. Like I'm a bit of an activity buff, so I do like doing lots of activities and getting out there. Yeah, so that's things that I like to do. I mean, I'm very organized. I have OCD, so I'm also very organized. So a habit for me is I always make sure I know my calendar for the next day. So little habits. I don't like to come into the working day and sort of think, right, what am I doing today? The night before, I always check my calendar, check what's scheduled, check what's important, urgent, and always make sure, right, okay, bang. When I'm up at it, I know exactly what I'm doing the next day because, I want to be productive from the off and not be thinking about what I should be doing. So I should already know that from the night before.
I think you've downplayed that a little bit, Rob. I'm not sure that's a little habit. I think that's
maybe
quite
not.
a significant habit.
Maybe, yeah, or maybe. But organization is very important because, like you, when you're doing lots of things, I could be wearing 4 different hats in the day. I could be doing the recruiting side. I could be doing the podcasting side. I could be doing an investor meeting. I could be doing a mentoring session. I could be doing a speaking engagement. That's quite a lot of stuff in one day. So if you're not organized or you don't know where you need to be or what you need to be doing, that can lead to burnout, fatigue, stress, worry, anxiety, all of these various things. So yeah, very, very important.
Absolutely. And speaking of all those different hats, how have you found that having this podcast and being the community builder has really enabled you to differentiate yourself from other recruiters or consultants in your field? What would you say has really made a difference?
Yeah, I think it's because people see me as the community builder first, right? And that's what's most important to me. I felt I could have just stayed being, and this is similar to the point of the lawyers we said before about why do I need to build a personal brand or why do I need to do this? I could have continued doing the recruitment, just day in, day out, transaction, dealing, deal, right? I totally understand that. But that's not going to fill my cup and be true to my values or what I want to do. Because the reason I got into legal originally is for the reasons I said to you before, my why. And I couldn't fulfill my why by doing that. I needed it to be bigger. I needed to do something more impactful and really feel like I was doing something. So for me, that's really, really important. And as a result of being seen as this community builder, that has separated me apart because I've built trust. Right. I feel that, and I don't say that in a verbose or arrogant way, but I've built up that social capital, right? And I've built up these level of relationships. And then when people start to see that you've collaborated with a Gary Vee, you've been on LinkedIn's headquarters, you've been invited by a tech unicorn to these various things. You're speaking for Thomson Reuters, you're speaking at LegalX like yourself. You're doing all of these things that are just happening because you're doing good for the industry. That then moves you from recruiter to thought leader and community builder. And as a result of that, it means you're starting from a conversation of people want to talk to you rather than me having to go out and fight for people to talk to me. And that's the difference with all of this. You'll get more inbound quality discussions because you're basically building your tribe, right? And so through that tribe, you're going to meet right and like-minded individuals. So, my recruitment business has done successfully well through this digital strategy and community building strategy, but it's not happened overnight. So I had to play the long game. Back to your question you asked before about, relationships. Why do certain people not do it? Because they want the quick win. They want the quick deal then, right? So my company probably went back 2 or 3 steps as a result of building this. But now we're sort of past that we've done the initial building and taking the time and getting the relationships and getting to know everyone and going everywhere and doing everything. We're now on a boom. And that's, and again, I don't say that in a verbose way. I say that and just because I believed in the strategy. I believe why we're doing it. And it's all very authentic, which is important to me. Because in business, like I say, contacts are good, but relationships pay, and authentic relationships are super important.
And I find that it's actually very helpful as well to introduce you. So, for example, when I have a client that is looking for the next role, I personally have found it really great that I could share a podcast. And I specifically would choose a podcast on a topic that I knew meant something to the candidate that I had in mind. And That is such a powerful introduction. Just listen to this podcast, because then before they call you, they've already heard your voice. So they already know you, like you, trust you. And I think that's a very powerful business card, isn't it?
It is, and I was interviewing somebody in Nashville when I was in ClearCon last year, and they talked a lot about online communities and people having a view on it. And she said she feels more attached, not detached, through the online world, through that exact point that you just said. Because when you meet someone in the room for the person, they already know you. They already feel like they know you. They feel like there's a connection there, or they've seen something, or they've resonated with you. And that's why this is so all important, because it can actually increase that level of connection. And it's so important nowadays, because that's the way you're going to separate yourself. Because the reality is, a lot of people do a lot of the same things. They repackage it in various different ways. But if you can build that real, genuine connection with people, you're absolutely going to win.
And what role do you think podcasting specifically plays in that ecosystem?
I think podcasting is one of the best things you can do when it comes to building a brand, building a business, improving your career, being seen as a thought leader. And they have, I mentioned before, a long tail. So, for example, just one simple podcast recording, that could create a multi-suite of assets that you could repurpose that would be useful for your personal brand. So, for example, we're recording via video. You could chop this up into 10 different video clips that you could release as a series on potentially how to build a community. You could create 5 or 6 articles or blogs or quotations from this particular show. You could create some audiograms. You could write a newsletter. You could do so many things through just podcasting. But the other great thing about podcasting, and particularly like this, you get to collaborate. Right. And you get to bring on people, and you get to learn from different voices, and you get to shine light on people that maybe are doing great things, that maybe they have been in their career. And like I said before, I believe it's selfish not to share your knowledge. Maybe you can come on and share some of that knowledge and wisdom. And as a result of that, you're doing good. And as a result of that, you're going to get sort of interest in your brand and interested in who you are. And I think podcasts is such a great way to grow, to learn, to build community. And I still think it's super early for the podcasting space. And just be yourself. I think there's a real way to connect with people through the power of voice. We saw the rise of various social audio platforms over the last few years. There's that real connection with the power of voice. And so for me, I'm all in on podcasting. I'm grateful for podcasting. I don't think half of the opportunities that I've had, the exposure, the amazing people like yourself and so many others in the legal and wider community, none of this would have happened if I hadn't have pushed the button on going all in on a podcast.
Do you have a podcast superhero?
Do you know it's a really good? Do you know what? Because I'm with you. I do like Jake's high performance podcast as well. I think that's a good podcast. But also, I also like my friend. He's called Alex Chisnell. He's got the Screw It, Just Do It podcast.
I'll add in the show notes.
Yeah, and he always asks all of his guests, "What was your Screw It, Just Do It moment?" Because we live in this world of procrastination, for entrepreneurs or people in a career. What was that time you just went for it? Similar to like your question at the top of the show around, what you feel your superpower is. He has that sort of screw it, just do it moment. I think there's some really interesting, cool answers and some great guests he had as well.
Oh, great. What was your inspiration to start your podcast when you did? I know we're going years back now, but what was your motivation and inspiration?
Well, you've asked me on a few occasions today what makes you different from your competitors or how that stands out. And it's a very valid question. And that was a question I asked myself when I started my business, my legal recruitment business back in 2016. And this may sound harsh, but I had all the passion, I had all the love, I had all the why. But why should people care? I need to give people a reason to care, right? When you say, why do so many businesses start and fail? The reality is you may want it to work, but unless it's valuable to the audience that you're trying to teach, or it's going to be of real need, it's not ultimately going to succeed. And I thought, there's no way I can compete from zero with my competitors that have been around for 15 years, that have large databases, that have been doing this for years and years and years, built up all the relationships with the law firms. So I thought, what can I do that's different, that they're not doing, that actually maybe they might be a bit behind the curve that I could do. And many years ago, we became the first legal recruitment podcast in the UK to launch, right? We went into an area that no one was touching, right? We went into interviewing people. And as a result of that, podcasting, as you'll know, our show's now in over 5,000 cities around the world. We have immense coverage. It was a great way for me to build up a brand and be seen as a thought leader and driving conversations and be part of the legal media. And so it was almost like my business development tool. I was putting out high quality content, getting seen, and then I could hook people on the back end to say, they made me reading or listening to an episode about how to become a partner in a law firm. And I've had a corporate partner coming on talking about their journey. Oh, hi, Rob. I really enjoyed that episode about how to become a partner. I'm actually a corporate associate. I see you also help with the legal recruiting mandates. Could we have a conversation? So again, back to your point about you're already seen, you already know them through content. Like, this is super, super powerful stuff that if you put good stuff out that's relevant to your industry and it comes from a place of good, things will happen off the back of it. So really for me, it was a chance to be seen as a thought leader, to business develop in a strategic way. And rather than go and talk to a law firm partner and say, hi, are you recruiting for any jobs at the moment? And by the way, you don't know me. I've just started yesterday and you've been working with competitors for 20 or 30 years. Will you give me some jobs? Probably the answer would have been no. So I started the relationship like I like to start all of my relationships, with leading with value. So I'd ring the partners up at the law firm and say, look, I know you're exceptionally busy, but I've actually recently looked at a lot of your last 3 or 4 articles, and I've noticed they haven't got as great search engine optimization or as engagement as I think they should, given the level of time and detail you put into the quality of the content. I've got a different way that you could probably communicate your message that will have 3 direct benefits to you. 1, it will allow you to be seen more as a thought leader. 2, it will help you when you're coming to hire your people from a talent attraction and retention. And 3, it can all be done in less than 50 minutes, and I'll do everything for you. This will be in the form of a podcast. I'll do this, and this for you. Would this be of interest to you? It's very hard for someone to say, no, I'm not interested. When you lead with value, when you research your prospects, you actually give them context, you actually really present to them a solution that's valuable to them. And you understand that, like, the number one pain point for these people is time. And you can actually say, I can do all this literally within an hour for you. What a great way for me to start the relationship. Because remember, what did I say right from the start? What's my superpower? Starting relationships and then nurturing them. And through delivering value and getting to know them and not selling and serving, then as a result of that, I suddenly become their trusted advisor when it comes to talent and retention as well. And they instruct me for their jobs as well. Which I think is pretty incredible. I think that strategy, if I could say so myself, no one saw it coming, but it worked pretty well. And as a result of that, it's been it's really. But you can't rest on your laurels, because more people are obviously starting podcasts now. More people are becoming aware of this. So I'm always thinking of the next thing, and that's why I think hyper-connected community building and interactive communities and all the things that we've sort of lightly touched on is where you're going to stand out now to make sure people seen, heard, and valued, and all of that good stuff.
Do you think there is still misconception, particularly in our legal community, around podcasting?
Yes, there may be, but I think because there's been so many success stories now, and people have seen how what podcasts can really do for you, I'd hope that narrative is changing. And then obviously you've got the larger players, the lawyer and various other outlets that have their own shows. I still believe that if you're wanting to get sort of visibility, you're wanting to get a message out there, you're wanting to get some marketing, you're wanting to improve your speaking, you're wanting to do whatever it is, I still think podcasting is a fantastic way. And look, when we first started, obviously we were having to go out to get guests, and we were having to really research and fight really hard. We now get to the point now where we get lots and lots and lots of lawyers obviously writing to us all the time saying, hey, do I want to come up? Can I come on? I want to talk about this, and this. So I think it's changing slightly, but I still think podcasting is a phenomenal way for you to be seen, heard, and for you to share your knowledge. And the other thing as a podcast host, of course, if you collaborate with people, say you want to set up your own podcast, you basically can take people's audience. So, for example, when I have people come onto my show, with that guest, if they share the episode with their community, that's basically bouncing their community into my community. I'm getting new audiences, new eyeballs. So again, if you're thinking of going on a podcast, you're potentially going to get that podcast host audience into your community and vice versa. And that's super powerful.
It is. It truly is. Do you find that there are still lawyers that are reluctant? I don't know about you, but a lot of my clients, when I bring up being featured on a podcast or even connecting them with hosts that I think could be a great match, there is oh, no, I don't do that. Do you still find this a little bit?
To an extent, but I always think with all of these things, it comes down to everyone's favorite radio station, WIFM. What's in it for me, right?
Me.
And yeah, and so if I'm thinking of that conversation or having that conversation with someone, hey, you should go on this podcast. I can maybe understand if someone says, hey, no, but if it's sort of presented in the right way, these are the reasons why you should go on this podcast, and it's relevant to them and there's real value to them, I think it's far less chance that they would probably say no, even in taking into account the time. I always think if you're trying to sell things, there's three things: time, quality, or cost. They're the three variables that you try and pivot around, that people maybe say, I don't have enough time, I can't afford it, or I don't think it's good enough. If you can find ways to sort of get around those three through the what's in it for them, through effective questioning and opening them up with open direct questions, all of that, I think you can get people to do those sort of things. It's when people don't like being told what to do, right? That's the reality. And, I always say, successful sales is not being known, you're being sold to, right? So people should not be feeling like they're being sold to if you're speaking to a very sophisticated salesperson. It should just be a natural process, and it should feel very genuine. It should feel very, very, very natural. And I think with those sort of conversations, you shouldn't be feeling to people say, you need to go on the show, it's great for you. It should be, do you know what, Rob, I see where you're coming from. Should I maybe go on the show? And, then it's worked, right? Because it's really valuable to them.
Absolutely. And now, Rob, we've heard a lot about your superpower and you've demonstrated how you've mastered relationship building. What would you say to someone who perhaps has a limited mindset around relationship building, either doesn't necessarily think they're good at it? I know that's a bit of a cliche thing to say, but I hear that quite often. Oh, I'm not very good at the social dimension of relationship building, particularly with very, very extraordinarily technical lawyers. I still hear that quite a lot. I'm not very good at networking. I hear this quite a lot. I'm not very good at interaction. I'm not a very good public speaker. I'm sure you hear this quite a lot. What would you say when you hear this?
Well, again, they're all limiting beliefs, right? I would argue they're not. I would say they're all probably very good at all of those, but you have to take the first step. So let's use one of those examples. Networking. You're not very good at networking. Well, here's a simple thing. Networking is basically, in my opinion, you want to get introduced to people, right? You want to meet new people. You want to grow your networks, maybe for new business opportunities, maybe for personal brands, maybe for collaborations, whatever it might be. So, let's use the analogy of working warm. I always say to people, if that's one of your goals as growing your networks, is work warm. So what do I mean by that? Who do I know? Who do you know who could introduce me to someone I don't know? So that's a very simple way to start networking, right? Is to use your existing networks of who you know and say, hey, who do you know you could introduce me to someone I don't know, right? And that warm introduction is a great way to start getting networking. Actually, do you know what? This is not as hard as I thought. I'm leveraging my existing networks, or maybe go with someone to a networking event you normally wouldn't go to. Someone that you trust, and maybe they can introduce you to certain people, and you can kind of work off their energy and see how they do it. They're just some very simple ways to get started. The other thing is, if you don't like the in-person thing at all, then we've talked a lot about the online strategy, right? A great way to network now is commenting. That for me is e-networking. commenting on people's posts and putting something insightful into there is a great way. And you don't have to leave your desk. You don't have to go and shake someone's hand. You don't have to be in a noisy conference room. You don't have to say, hey, how's the weather? Or, did you get the bus here? You don't need any of that small talk. If you don't want to do any of that, then getting into online discussions and actually putting something valuable is a great way to network. You can also go and be part of groups. Maybe there's groups and societies that you're interested in. Through that, you're going to meet right and like-minded people that you like. But the reality is, it doesn't matter if you're rubbish at something once. We're all going to be rubbish at something when we first start. The main thing is you just start and you get better and better and better and better. And this is one of the quotes that I love from Bruce Lee. I think I quote this quite a lot of the time, that I picked up from someone around. I fear not the man who's practiced 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times. So I think really to get good at these things, you need to kind of keep working and working and working. So if networking is a skill that you want to work on, you've really got to keep going at it until you get to that level that, you feel like you're comfortable. I would say I'm still working on my networking skills, and I have a philosophy that I always say, which is NSN. Which is never stop networking. And of course, yes, maybe I run businesses. I'm not got the entrepreneurial mindset. It's very much needed, but I think it's the same for all of us, whether we're entrepreneurs, lawyers, whatever it may be. That never stop networking, because you may be one conversation away from a new client, a new job, a new opportunity, a new collaboration, whatever it might be. So, we're all needing to stay curious. We're all needing to stay sort of connected. And I think for me, it's the number one thing that I'm doing day in, day out. Hence why I show up on LinkedIn and all of these various platforms, because I want to be continually having conversations.
Well, speaking of conversation and collaboration, one last thing that I would love to ask you about is your collaboration with Clio and the role that it has played, and perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about the company.
Yeah, so Clio are a legal practice management software. They have a very clear mission, which they want to transform the legal experience for all. I think they're one of the first legal tech unicorns that then went on to be Centaurs. If you're not familiar with a Centaur, that is an organization that generates over 100 million annual recurring revenue. And their strategy is very much to grow through collaboration. So they're one of the first legal tech providers to have an open API, which means a lot of the other legal tech providers that are whenever it comes to billing, to all the various different solutions that people are offering, they can collaborate with Clio so they can lead on to their mission, which is to transform the legal experience for all. They put on a crazy, amazing Clio cloud conference every year called ClioCon. I went last year and it was phenomenal, over 2,500 people. And it has the best, sharpest minds in terms of the innovation of legal. Now from sort of being able to use your iPhone as a payment terminal for clients to pay for your legal services as a tap, through to Clio Duo, which is their new AI automated tool, which can really work with you as basically your assistant, to all these crazy things. Now, there's my little plug on Clio, but where am I going with this? Well, with my show, remember you asked me why did I start the podcast before? I needed a vehicle to be seen, heard, and to stand out for my legal recruiting business, right? I needed a vehicle to do that. The podcast was that. And once we're being, successful and being consistent and putting out shows, we were generating interest. And, I thought, okay, well, maybe we could think of other ways that we could grow the show, we can monetize the show, and we can turn this into a whole sort of, a thing. And so, Clio reached out off the back of that, and we had various organizations that reached out off the back of that. Why did we choose Clio? Well, again, it was a very clear strategy for me. Clio are trying to penetrate the same sorts of clients that I'm trying to do business with from the recruiting side. They're trying to target law firms. They're selling into mid-sized law firms and certain sized law firms that I wanted to do business with. So there was a clear synergy and a clear link between the two of us for why that collaboration would make sense, because obviously I was working with law firms. I'm day in, day out law firms. They're looking for introductions to law firms for their tech solutions. So it worked really, really well. So my biggest piece of advice to you is if you're thinking of starting a podcast or a YouTube channel or any sort of vehicle, if you like, where you're maybe looking for relationships, sponsorships, those sort of things, think about where it's a win-win. right? Because we could easily be the Legally Speaking podcast sponsored by, I don't know, Zip Shoes or Hamburger Hamburger whatever. But there was no strategic alignment with them. We had some odd ones that reached out to us, but actually, where there was a strategic alignment and it made sense, it was really, really good. So again, because it comes back to my values of relationships, right? Because it would have been very easy to take a very weird sponsor just for the money. But that doesn't fit in line with what, Clio's mission of transforming the legal experience for all is a value that my mission of, kinder, more collaborative legal is a real synergy there. And so from the relationship perspective and the values perspective, it aligned. And in terms of the strategic perspective, it aligned as well. And so that's how that collaboration has gone. It's been fantastic. I think they're a wonderful organization with a huge, audacious goal. And I absolutely love it.
And the picture from your recent trip to Nashville looked amazing.
Yeah, no, it was an incredible experience. And this year, is Austin, Texas. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there in November or October.
Excellent. Well, wonderful. Rob, I'm so grateful for you sharing all of your powerful insights today on the superpower of building relationship. Is there one more thing that you would love to leave our audience with before we talk about how they can connect with you? Is there one more affirmation, a word of wisdom, piece of advice that you would love to share?
Yeah, and I always come on people's shows, and hopefully, I give something that they feel, really energetic and, hopefully inspired by. Before I say that, I want to say, firstly, I think, you're an amazing interviewer. I think you're one of the kindest, most, genuine thought leaders and collaborators in the legal and wider community. And I've really, really enjoyed the way that you've questioned me today and the way you've challenged me and got me thinking. And it's been a real, real pleasure being here. But I always end on probably quite a tough but real message. And it's, again, what one of my mentors said to me, because the reality is knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. So if you've listened to this today, great, but not applying it is really kind of a waste. So remember this, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, and take accountability for your actions.
I love that. I really do. Thanks for sharing. And could you now tell us a little bit more about how the audience can connect with you, work with you, find out more about what you do?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to learn more about me, you can follow me at Robert Hanna on LinkedIn. You just type in Robert Hanna, Casey Partners, or Legally Speaking Podcast. You'll be able to find us. If you want to know more about our podcast, it's just legallyspeakingpodcast.com. If you want to join our Legally Speaking Club community, where we share resources, events, have topical discussions, talking about the changes in the legal industry and lots more, you can join our Legally Speaking Club Discord, where you can get the link from my profile page on LinkedIn. You just go to my LinkedIn profile and then say join my community, and there's a simple link there. And that's it. I mean, in various other platforms as well. I'm on Instagram, Rob_Law_KC. But yeah, the best place is probably LinkedIn to find me.
And I'll make sure that I include all of those links into the show notes. Thank you so much, Rob. It was an absolute delight to have you on the show today.
No, the pleasure is all mine. I feel very grateful for having the opportunity to be here. So thank you ever so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Now that you've learned all these business strategies to elevate your career, I have one more gift for you. I have prepared an audio guided confidence boosting recording so that you can start boosting your confidence day to day in your professional life. Follow the show notes to get this recording.